Hello there. We are live from Paris. This is David Brower, the Sensorial Guy, pleasure coach, on today's Make Living Pleasurable show with a special guest. Today we're going to be talking about eating for pleasure. Let me see if I can bring our special guest on here. There we go. Mr. Daniel Young of Young and Foodish. We just invited him here. Let's see, I'm going to bring him on screen here. There we go. Bring you on camera here, Dan. Looking forward to that. Thanks everyone for coming and showing up here for this conversation around eating for pleasure. Once I get Dan on here, we'll get right into it. But thanks for being part of this series. This is the third so far in the series. And we're going to continue. There we go. Bring Dan on board. There he is. How you doing, Dan?
Pretty good, David. Great to see you.
You look good, man. Look at you. You're always in red. That's your color thing, isn't it?
That is my color, yes.
Yeah, you kind of figured that one out. I'm blue. Did you notice?
I know. We almost have a French flag going.
Yeah, we put like a white thing, bleu rouge, right in front of us. Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so great to be here. Thank you for coming on this Make Life Pleasurable show with me to talk about eating for pleasure. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I didn't know there was another way, but go for it.
Exactly. Well, I want to do a little intro for you. Nothing too crazy, but I'm gonna do like a shameless pitch here around my dear friend Daniel. How long have we known each other, Dan? Is it 25 years?
Yes.
Wow, that's incredible. Dear friend.
27 years.
27 years. Wow, almost as long as I've been in Paris.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. So Daniel is a very prolific writer around food and the eating experience and cooking. And he most recently, I believe your most recent book is Where to Eat Pizza, which one day I'll get a signed copy of. I'm pining for that these days. And besides that, Dan has written so many other beautiful books. The Paris Cafe Cookbook, shameless pitching here. The Bistros, Brasseries, and Wine Bars of Paris book. This is a really good one. I remember going out to some places with you in this. The Made in Marseille book. Really beautiful book. I love that one. And I don't have all of them, but I have a couple more. Coffee Love. Oh my gosh, amazing. Frappe Nation. I mean, just like, how many books have you written, Dan, around food?
9.
9? Single digit, man. That's too bad. We'll get you to 10. So I'm so happy to be here. And I also wanted to mention that you're one of the real mavericks and pioneers of the food pop-up culture in London. Is that right?
I think so, yes. I started doing pop-up series 10 years ago. So wow. It wasn't that common. People didn't even know the term at that time. So neither did I, actually. But I was doing them. And obviously it's, part of a new way of experiencing food.
And that is for sure. Yeah, I've been to a couple of those. Those are incredible. I think I came in and helped serve wine once or something. It was a lot of fun.
I'm glad we put you to work.
Had to get my keep there. So of course I brought a pain au chocolat here just to make you jealous while we're here talking about eating for pleasure. And I mean, what's this thing about eating for pleasure? What does that mean to you?
Okay, well, it means something probably different to me than maybe a lot of you and David and so forth. So for me, food is part of a story. And it's a lot of it is memory food. So if you say your mother made the best chicken soup or the best meatballs or best pain chocolat, whatever. That's part of memory and a family story. And so it's 100% fact that you'll never have another chicken soup like your mother's or grandmother's or grandfather's or whatever, because it's attached to memory. So my whole oeuvre, if you can call it that, my whole thinking about pleasure is the story that you're a part of by experiencing food, that you plug into a story. So for me, the pleasure is recognizing those stories. And if you want to go a little spiritual on it, it's not just a linear story. It's like it's taking off in a galaxy. There's sparks going all over the place. So some memories, like your mother's chicken soup, you're really aware of. But you might respond to a wine and not realize that you're responding to another wine, say a Cabernet Franc that you had 25 years ago, and it triggers a response. So it's not always great food. David, two of my greatest, most pleasurable food experiences have been my worst. And one of them's been with you. We had a No, we were on a bicycle trip in Burgundy and really climbing and doing miles. I think we did about 70, 80 kilometers that day, and we were starving. We didn't have enough snacks. And we found a little, we couldn't find any place to eat in Burgundy. And finally, we found a little kind of bar tabac bistro, and all they had was croque monsieur sandwiches. And, croque monsieur, ham and Swiss toasties. And it was one of the worst things I've ever had in my life. But we were so hungry, and it was so bad that we laughed and laughed and laughed. And we will never forget that. So eating for pleasure, that was eating for pleasure, not necessarily because it was good or because it was a great chef or a great grandmother or whatever, but it's a shared experience. And that, to me, so you're sharing with friends or people at the table, or you're sharing with memories or thoughts or things you've read about or things you've experienced. I know you're a fan of Anthony Bourdain. It wasn't just a recipe. It was a joie de vivre, a love of people and culture that he brought so alive. And that's a very long answer to what the pleasure of food is to me.
That's a great answer. That's so rich. And I remember very well that story, bicycling. But it's funny because it means that you can have a pleasurable experience that you don't even know is coming.
Well, exactly. And that I was worried going in that you were going to ask me to explain, because it's not easy to explain how to do it. It's not like you turn on a switch and you have pleasure, you have to be open to it. And this is something I've read from you, following you and what you're doing, because if you're closed to it, if you're disintegrated, as you love to say, from experience, if you're a loner, a loner can have good individual solitary experiences, and they're open to those, but you still have to be open. I find it easier to integrate with people than to withdraw, but still, if you're open to that, that's the thing about falling in love. You hope you're ready when you meet that person. Because imagine if you were turned off that day, the one day you met that unbelievable person, that would be a great tragedy. And it's the same thing with food. I think one of my talents is that I'm open for experience. And my mother says that crazy things happen to me. Amazing things happen to me. And there are other writers that amazing things happen to them. And actually, it's not supernatural, it happens. These people are curious, they're open, and they're waiting for experience and discovery. They go in with the idea that something extraordinary might happen. And sometimes it does.
Yeah, it's like asking for the gift, right? You're saying, like, what is the gift in this moment? Even if it's kind of not where you want to be, even if someone else has taken and chosen the place, like to say, what is actually going to be the gift of pleasure that I'm going to get? And it could be a conversation, like you said, it could be meeting the love of your life. It could be eating one food that takes you back in time or that reminds you of another story. And a lot of it, Dan, to me, it really is about your ability to really be present to what you're experiencing, right? This conscious presenceness, that you're not like lost somewhere else and so distracted that you're not able to actually be there for the experience of what you're living. And so you're kind of missing it. And when you start to miss it, you miss a lot of the gifts, these nuances and things. And maybe some would argue that it's good not to be there. And I think you wrote this to me once. It's good maybe not to be there. The food may taste better when you're out because you're distracted by more stimulation, noise and people moving and other sounds, and maybe there's music playing and there's passersby, and who knows where you are. And so you're less perhaps attentive to the actual experience of food itself. But the question begs, does that mean you're not eating for pleasure?
Well, that's a lot to unpack. So I am distracted by other things that are going on in the place. Okay. So in the sense that if I'm locked in, if I'm dining with my wife or I'm dining with this great plate, I'm still going to be distracted in public. And at home too, there are other stimuli or ideas in my brain that are going to distract me. So it's hard to be a taster where you're really locked in. So I agree with what I said in the past, but you
can't integrate both. It's not so black and white, but imagine you get a kind of good, you're able to kind of encompass, I mean, maybe some would say the brain can't do that, but I think there's a way to kind of overlap, integrate. No?
I think when you're tasting something for the first time, that's a moment to really zero in on that thing and understand, really feel for it. So that's how I would cheat on that answer. But, I've been thinking a lot about, in this year of COVID and lockdowns and being alone or not going to restaurants and ghost kitchens where you can get great takeout food. Mm-hmm. And actually, I thought that when you go to the cinema and you see a really funny film with lots of people, you're hysterical laughing. And if you're watching that same film at home, it's not the same. You might say, this is funny. Once you're saying this is funny, something's wrong. Because you're feeling it funny and your body's shaking and you feel this pleasure and chills up your spine and stuff. So once you say this is great, it's a diminished experience already. And I think the same thing is in with food. When I spoke to you, when you were quoting me there, I think, yes, in the privacy of your home, you can zero in, you can really taste the wine but actually, no. The reason why we say that pasta never tastes as good at home as it was when I was in Tuscany because you're bringing experience and new memories to it. So I don't believe in fighting that anymore. I really miss that. But I think the home experience can be enhanced. So Netflix at home has changed home cinema, whatever, and you get better sound and you get a bigger screen. So there are things that you can enliven the experience at home and bring more pleasure of food at home. And, Russ Parsons, a great writer, formerly of the LA Times now, and he talked about the pleasure of preparing food, that it's hypnotic. So if you're in it and it's a chore and you've got 20 minutes and you got 5 alarms, but if you're really getting into it, and same thing, if you sit down and then you eat in 3 minutes, you're not getting into it. Yeah. So I think we can all get into it or immerse ourselves or enjoy it in different ways, because pleasure, we talk about sexual pleasure, so it's different for different people. So why shouldn't the pleasure of food, we don't like the same things, or we don't like it the same way or at the same time or the same level of spiciness or fat, or some of us don't eat meat or pleasure is different for different people, but we have to be open to it and we have to figure out how we can dial into that space.
So this is a kind of interesting segue to a question that we have, Dan, that's from Rolf, who I know quite well. How you doing, Rolf? Thanks for being here. He says, hi there. Wondering if you both feel a story built from sharing the preparation is more or equally as significant as the actual consumption. We were just talking about that. Absolutely. I mean, for me, like there's the different stages of actually cooking, at least when you're cooking at home, and that whole process of preparation. I mean, shopping is one thing, but then, the whole preparation and the cooking of the meal itself is an incredibly connected moment if you're with other people. It's a very sensory driven moment that takes you out of your anxiety and heads because you become very manual, very material. And so when you start to move, your sensations, your focus actually goes, so you don't cut a finger off with a really sharp knife. You need to be really present to it. So Rolf, yeah, I mean, I think preparation is a huge part of it. It's great for friends, for couples, parents and their kids. Like that whole time together is really a special time of actually creating something transformative and that you're going to get instant satisfaction of pretty quickly afterwards together. I mean, how many things do we create together that we then consume together, literally? That uses all of our senses and allows us to be creative. It allows us to be open-minded. It allows us to stretch ourselves, trying foods we haven't experienced before, or spices, or a way of cooking. It's all in like how creative and resourceful you get around it in the process. And then, yeah, for me, it brings us really present. And when we're present with an intention or a desire to have a conversation or connect with somebody, sometimes we can reach a level of intimacy and kind of relating that is really, really meaningful. And for me, it'd be such a shame to miss those opportunities, particularly during this time of COVID where a lot of people are home and maybe they're all sick of each other. But, if you change the intention and the usage of that time and you actually, instead of doing things separately, if you can do maybe together, and then you talk about different things that you want to talk about, or you explore things. It's just really about the intention and how you want to use that. What about you, Dan?
Well, Rolf, I love the question. I really do love the question. And that's the important thing to me is the question, that there are these two segments of a meal. But I can't answer because the circumstance, you really want to make both parts of it as special as possible. But I'll give you an example. I have friends who we've had for dinner, and you work on something for 3 hours in food and you go shopping all over. And then the eating part is 5 minutes and they're talking, they're not even noticing, So, but that's who they are. That's fine. So if I relied only on the after, then it would be unsatisfying. And also I've worked in the kitchens of restaurants. Okay. So when you're a chef, unless you're or a cook as I was, unless you're in the dining room, Rolf, you don't see people enjoying your food. All you see is the plates coming back. Okay. So yeah, there's satisfaction in seeing a cleared plate. But all the pleasure of it is working with the brigade, working with the team in the kitchen. So there's no pleasure after. I used to actually in New York, I used to have little memo pads because we didn't have iPhones back then, and I used to put little notes on the plate. Hey, David, you've seen me do this in Paris. I used to do little notes for the chef, saying how much I love something or why or whatever, because I felt that he or she would not get any notice other than a clean plate, and that, chefs you talk about if you wanted to meet a great chef or get a selfie or whatever it is, you made that chef's day by a little note, such an easy thing to do. So I agree with you, David, that the first part is such a great opportunity. On the other hand, though, if you're cooking for something, you're dying for this person to see what you did with this dish. It doesn't matter if that's a 30-second experience, but the person just puts down their fork and goes, chapeau, that it's not how long the pleasure lasts, it's how wide the pleasure is. And so that, or even your friends, if you could see that you've made a connection, or I've done events where people have met and fallen in love and gotten married and had kids, all stemming from meetings. So, there's a life to food as well. But it's a great question, and to circle around, I respect David's view, but the best thing is that you're asking that question. If we're all asking that question, we could decide for ourselves about it.
So you're suggesting also that we're not all equal in terms of our pleasure that we procure from eating.
We're not equal in anything, David. But it's not better or worse, okay? So
I love that.
okay, but I would say something interesting, okay? That food is the new rock and roll. So young people, listen to me. We used to self-identify, but by what bands or what music we listen to, or what our favorite subjects in school, or if we were jocks or goth or gay or whatever the group was. Okay, now we self-identify by the kind of food we like to eat and where we like to eat and with whom we like to eat. So it's quite a transformation. So actually, food is taking a bigger burden of how happy we are. So food can really make us happy and give us pleasure. But if we don't get it right, or if it's completely about fuel, protein shakes, or completely about health, but not about enjoyment, then it becomes destructive. So I think we have to acknowledge, if you want to eat for your health, the health of the planet and the health of the animals, bravo, 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 3 times. But that doesn't mean giving up pleasure. So I want to, if I can bring in the vegan thing, okay? I understand that if you're vegan, you're listening, I applaud you. And I understand a lot of you are missing meat experiences or dairy experiences or even honey, and you're looking for substitutes that give us a feeling that we're eating meat or that we're eating dairy or we're eating honey, okay, or fish. Now, I understand your need, but to me, first of all, a lot of those foods are ultra processed. So, and a lot of them are expensive, and a lot of them aren't great. And there are so many wonderful vegetables. So I kind of say, listen, if you can eat for pleasure first and be vegan, that would be great. However, I understand that if you used to be an omnivore or carnivore, that I understand you have strong memories and you want to hook into those memories. So I kind of bless that effort, but try to go for pleasure, as much as possible. And part of that will be new experiences that don't contain, if you're a vegan or want to, have only plant-based products, that, try to, hook into the pleasure principle and not the substitute ultra-processed answer.
Yeah, thanks for that, Dan. That's really insightful. And I really like the notion, again, of integrating, pleasure into something that is nourishing, integrating pleasure into some food ideology or lifestyle that you lead. For me, that's certainly a key component is how do I make this dining experience, whether I'm alone or with other people, maybe more qualitative is always nice, but also just more pleasurable. At home, I talk a lot about this, but I try to do the best, especially when I eat alone, and for others, to never put plastic on my table, right? Never put
Rose for a minute. Okay, you're back. Yeah.
So, to make the moments special, to use real good silverware and to use nice napkins and to kind of honor and love the moment. But
That's okay.
want to create a moment where you actually amplify the pleasure, you expand the pleasure, you offer yourself and surely others a more pleasurable moment in some ways by the nature and how you've taken care of preparing, presenting, and sharing the moment together. So yeah, it's a lot about that. And yeah, I mean, but like you, what do you love so much about eating? Your whole career in this life mostly has been around the eating experience. I mean, cooking also, but it's very much driven by, it seems, the eating experience. I mean, you used to be a food critic in New York City, one of the top ones. I very much benefited from that at some point. But why do you love eating so much?
I don't know how it first happened because there were signs even early on as a kid. But I grew up in New York, and food was a big part of life in New York. And it was sort of a contest. Like, have you been to this new place? Have you had this? Have you been to the new ice cream shop? Have
Yeah.
you had the lo mein So it was a big part of the culture.
Yeah.
But then I grew up in New York, but I went to university in Montreal. So food became a real window, a real door to other lives and other cultures. So one of the reasons why I love New York and I love New Yorkers, okay? But one of the reasons I went to McGill and to Montreal is because I wanted to experience another culture, okay? I wanted to not go to school with the kids I went to high school with, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so even when I was in Montreal and Quebec, I wasn't hanging out with Americans. I was kind of hanging out with some English Canadians, but I had a lot of good Francophile friends. And so they were really into food, and they would invite me over. And then I got into a cooking club because I had an apartment. I didn't have a dorm. So we had to cook for ourselves. And then at that time, there was so many great ethnic eateries because Montreal was at that time, it was pre-gentrification. So it was every, Greeks, Poles,
Mm-hmm.
Vietnamese, Chinese, everything. And it was cheap. It's like €3 for lunch.
Amazing.
It was not. So we went to these places, and then I met other. I was year one, year two, and then I met upper class kids who had been doing this and say, "Dan, man, you haven't been to Arahova. You're nowhere, man. So I just got into that culture. Okay,
Yeah.
so with one of the upper class guys, this guy Steve Biondolillo, when we got back to New York, he said, let's just cover New York, So we got on subway lines in Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, and just went on every station and got out and found out because the restaurants would be circulated around the stations. And we just went to every place and jotted it down, and we met amazing people and tried food. And I wanted to be a sports writer, but I was doing all this at the same time. So I was working for Money Magazine, and someone said, there was a writer, a senior editor actually, who said, I have cousins coming in from Chicago, and they want to, they're 18 or 20, they want to know where to eat. And they said, oh, contact Dan Young, And so they contacted me, and they said, you're amazing. You should be doing this for a newspaper. I have a friend who works for the Daily News. And that's how I did it. And then I never looked back,
Wow, extraordinary. 9 books later, I don't know how many articles you've written around food, hundreds, thousands.
Yeah, but
Um,
the thing is, so that kid in uni, that was me,
mm,
so I've never changed what I do. I mean, I don't do it for newspapers as much. I do it at events, or I do it online, or I have a website or whatever. But I just find great things to eat or discover or to meet or
yeah,
to learn. And then I'm like, I share. That's what I do. I tell people about it. That's
yeah,
what I did at 16 and 18 and 20, And so now it's become the internet, Instagram and Facebook. It's all about that. Everybody does it, So that's a big part of pleasure. But try to enjoy it, don't leave the pleasure so you can run home and tell your friends about it. Wait till tomorrow.
yeah. That's a great story, a great life path, Dan. It's really, really admirable. I know I've been very fortunate to share an innumerable dining experiences with you, which has always been full of so much pleasure. Let me ask you this: do you feel that you get more pleasure out of eating today than those early days? 30 years down the road, 40 years down the road, whatever it's been. I mean, does your experience of eating and getting pleasure and exploring and being open and exciting your curiosity and just the nature of your job, anything, has it made you get more pleasure out of the dining experience? And if so, could you speak to that?
Yeah, it's a tough question and a good question. And I'd say because a lot of my eating is not work related, so there's less stress involved. And because I now have a 10-year-old kid, I get tremendous pleasure eating with him. So
Mm,
I haven't had that kind of pleasure since I was eating with my father, when the
mm,
ages were
wow.
reversed. So
Mm,
I think um, there's that's a really great pleasure. On the other hand, when I was in Paris and in Marseille and really discovering great food and great culture and great things, that was that period. I would love to relive that period because it helps being younger or whatever. But it was, I had learned about French culture from movies, from French cinema, and then to go to Paris and to discover that I could be in the, plug into those movies, is incredible. So I'm not sure if I can relive that as much. Can I tell two quick stories?
yeah, please.
So I was in a restaurant in Perpignan, which is near the Spanish-French border on the
Yeah,
Mediterranean, and I was there around the time of the Tour de France, and I was dining in
that's
a
so good.
one-star Michelin restaurant alone, and an older gentleman. I say old. He was probably 60, but then he seemed very old. He invited me over to his table for Armagnac. And he and I, it was great. They say French people don't do that. He was alone, I was alone. Come over, have some Armagnac with me, whatever. And he started teaching me things. And he said, Daniel, don't marry for sex, marry for food. He said, because great sex lasts 3-4 years tops, but great food you'll have all your life. So it's terribly sexist and wouldn't be permissible there, but I felt I had access to like kind of a French cliche, directly, like
Yeah.
a character in a film. So I thought that was, a wonderful moment. And then one other more quickly one. I went to Chez Gladine, which you've been to. It's a little bistro in the 13th of Butokai, and
Yeah.
there was a, a young guy in the corner in a moth-eaten sweater jumper, just the ugliest, dirtiest thing you've ever seen. And he had like he was just rags all over, and he was eating. And the wine came, okay, and he put on a pair of like reading glasses or whatever, but like one glass was broken, and then it had like tape all around it, keeping it together. And he put on the glasses. This guy, and he took his glass of wine and he looked at it, okay, and looked at it like that. And then he took off his glasses and he went ahead and tasted the wine. And I said, this guy is a legend, okay? The first contact with the wine is with the eye, then with the nose, then with the taste. And this guy, this moth-eaten homeless student or whatever he was knew how to drink wine better than all the people who were going to Tayavon that night and buying 60, 80, 100, 200. He was a hero. That is amazing.
So
You
would you
talk.
say, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm saying that you can learn from that guy or whatever.
Yeah.
He
So
knew
you
that
can
moment.
get more pleasure. You can actually cultivate a sense of pleasure in the way that you experience what you're experiencing. That's a really good example. The way that you actually drink wine, you don't just get it and kind of just transactionally just start drinking it. Take a moment to look at it, kind of honor it. Sounds like he's really honoring it, right? And admire the color. I mean, the legs. You can get into more sophisticated things. Then you're actually smelling it and maybe closing your eyes so you're not taking so much. And then you actually taste it. And lucky you smell it before, because right, taste is so much smell. This makes so much sense in this order, right? And I believe, in my experience with people, is you actually, with that presence and that sensory kind of checklist that you go through, you do procure, you do get more, you draw more pleasure out of what you are experiencing. And as you do that more, you want to do that more and experience that more. And you want to explore more, and you want to have things that are more complicated and more nuanced. And so little by little, kind of your palette, improves. I bet you when you and your buddy were racing around New York City, the different places, little by little, your palette was getting educated, and you could actually start to discern a bit, where would I send someone to and not, and why, what's good here, what's not, what's well done here, what's not, and like what's giving you pleasure.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And there is an education. We self-educate by experience. And I
That's
think
right.
it starts with paying attention. There's a football writer, musician, and gourmand, intellectual named Philippe Auclair, who I idolize. He lives in London, but he's from Normandy. And anyway, someone asked him, he said, they were talking about Clos Rougeat. And he says, I've tasted a great wines and I thought they were good, but come on, isn't the difference like marginal, And Auclair said, yeah, the difference between Oasis and the Beatles is marginal. It's a margin of like 800 miles or something, But, but what happens is through experience, that margin grows. Okay? So when you're learning to drink wine, you go through the wine tasting. Of course, you're not even drinking wine. You're drinking a solution that has a lot of tannin or a lot of acid or a lot of sweetness or fruit, and you get to taste those. And then as you kind of educate your palate, you can taste the difference between Pinot Noir and Cabernet Franc. And then you can start tasting Cabernet Francs from different areas and then you do just from the Loire, and then you can taste the Chinon versus Saumur Champigny, and then you taste Saumur Champignys, and so that margin, it becomes a lot of different. So if you've had lobster rolls, if you've had one lobster roll, I'm sure you think it's the greatest thing you ever tasted, but you start to taste other lobster rolls, and then go, wow, that was like much better than the first one, or much worse. So that's and so those margins of experience, if you're paying attention, it's not as hard as you think. If you're paying attention and kind of think about what's going on and about that question, if you think about the preparation, okay? So that wine, think of all the work that went into that one bottle of wine. How many craftspeople worked on that? And then you open it up and you drink it like nothing, wow, what a missed experience, So paying attention enriches. It's not just pleasure, it's just greater life and greater experience. And you're going through this series. I mean, you're the pleasure coach, and you're dealing with a lot of things: color and music and art and landscape and love and all the things. It's all textural, and texture and colors and moods and stuff like that. So paying attention is half the battle, I think.
And how would you suggest people get better at paying attention to eating for pleasure?
So I don't know if there's an on or off switch. I think you have to ask yourself questions. How did that feel? There's a great English writer, and I think it's Ishikawa, who says all stories about how does that make me feel, and do you feel the same way, or does it make you feel different? So that's every story is that. So in food, David, you and I go and we try the wine. This is how it makes me feel. How does it make you feel? And then you throw it back and you have this conversation, or you have this conversation with yourself. So maybe asking questions and answering the questions in an open-ended way, not to make it a challenge, like, can you tell me if you taste artichoke and that? No. Don't make it about like that. Just, does it make you feel happy, sad? What does it do to your face? How does it feel going down? So if you start asking yourself questions like that, and I'm obsessed with pizza. So I find if you do a pizza with 40 toppings, you don't taste anything. It's just this wonderful, it's wonderful. It's this symphony of loud taste that goes in your mouth and you have no idea what's going on. So you're not going to be able to evaluate cheese or tomato sauce or the crust or whatever. You and I, we went to see a famous pizza maker in Naples named Enzo Coccio, and he taught us to stick our nose into the dough and smell what the dough's like. Okay, so he told us to do that, you know. So we weren't doing that. I had eaten, you know, whatever, 3,000 pizzas before that day, and ever since I've always been sticking my nose in the dough.
You don't see that very often.
So for me, the thing is what's important. Okay, so if it's roast chicken or poulet roti at a great rotisserie, it's still the chicken that counts, because you can never improve, you can hide the flavor of the chicken, but you can never improve the chicken.
Yeah.
Or the tomatoes, okay? Once I was working in a kitchen south of France in Perpignan or whatever, and we had these amazing seasonal tomatoes, and the chef just drizzled a little olive oil, a little breadcrumbs, you know, and put it out. And I said, "That's all you're doing with it?" And he said I was an imbecile, which is not as bad a word in French as it is in English or whatever. He said, "But do you think there's anything I can do to make that tomato better? Are you crazy?" You know? So it's like oysters, you know? We've had an argument, you and I, about whether you should put the mignonette sauce, okay? But the great oyster eaters say, no, you can't improve on that, you know. You can't improve on that oyster, you know, just have it raw. So actually, I go, let's have a great burger that's a burger patty, or a great pizza where the base is outstanding, or great chicken roti, or a wonderful white asparagus when they're in season. Let's learn to love the thing and not the accessories. And then we can have a celebration on the accessories, you know? And, you know, I think you go overboard on the accessories sometimes. So that's just my opinion, though. But I'm really obsessed with the thing, the great thing. You turned me on to the best duck, the best chicken in France. I've been to Brest. You showed me that from Noirmoutier, Chalon, that area was better. Same thing with the salt. You showed, you know, so there's no end of. You haven't tried the best anything. There will be better. None of us, you know, we've had Franco Pepe pizza. For now, we think it's the best. We've had Noirmoutier's, you know, Fleur de Sel. We've had chicken from Chalon. For the moment, those are placeholders. But we're going to find better, you know. But I love getting in, you know, people say they love simplicity, all that. That's what I mean. Let's find the best, you know, and then, you know, find out, then make the stew, make the bouillabaisse, make the coq au vin, you know, make it sing. So, and you love the bistro chefs, okay? So like Yves Comme du Bar or whatever. And these guys was completely about cuisine du marché. They would go to the market, find the best products first. And then find little ways to bring them out, to show off to best advantage. Mettre en valeur. So that's the better way than to do the reverse, that you found this kick-ass mole or whatever, and then you know, no, that's the wrong order of things. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree, in the sense that, well, let's put it this way. If you buy great ingredients, seasonal, fresh, and you transform them in a way that's, you know, creative and skillful and with love, you can actually create something pretty spectacular with those pieces together. I do feel, though, sometimes you can take certain things and actually make them better in the second part of that phase, right? When you think about what they say about wine tasting, things like this, that suggestion is huge, right? Like the placebo effect. This kind of thing that if I bring you a bottle of wine and told you it was $100 the bottle and served you a glass, your opinion of it right away would be, I mean, you've been tricked, but your opinion of it right away would clearly be higher. You know, it would be more like, this is so great, right? Because you've been planted with an idea that this is supposed to be kind of great. So I think in there we get a little bit, you know, mixed around, but surely I'm really big on expressing and explaining what you're serving people to actually enhance their experience. And it absolutely helps if you've actually done the proper sourcing and buying the vegetables, and you've done it in a way that makes the most sense. I like to make things really pretty. I think plating is important. I think it's part of the sensory experience, and it makes me feel like I'm in a big restaurant, and it makes it festive, and it's a moment for me actually just to feel like I'm in a creative mode. So I hit my dopamine or whatever is going on to actually do that. But that takes a lot more work, right? And that's a whole different kind of experience of that. So yeah, I mean
Well,
it's
I
you
think
know
what you're doing, and what a great chef in a expensive restaurant's doing, he's putting these ingredients and presenting them in really creative ways, or even transforming them, or she is putting it
yeah
on a plinth, and that puts you in a position. So if you go to a 3-star Michelin restaurant and normally you don't pay attention to food, you're probably going to pay more attention. And it's presented in a way like it gets oohs and ahs,
yeah
either by the design of the dish, or the way they've, turned feta cheese into feta powder, or foie gras into an ice cream pup, or, those are
yeah
transformation of the usual. So those are dramatic, cinematic ways of doing things. And also it might be a way to get them to get your diners to pay attention, or to say that something's important, or take out their camera and do an Instagram or whatever. So I respect you on that. I would say, if you want a butt in that training,
of course.
is not to be seduced by that placebo effect, to
Mm,
do the hard lifting, and to decide what you're experiencing and stuff, or listen to other people describe some of those things. So not to be overly seduced, to appreciate it or whatever, but also to kind of think of what's happening. So when you're tasting a
yeah
wine, I don't believe in shaming someone to say, try a 20, 80, 200-year wine and put them in order of price. I don't believe that. That's not useful. I think it's useful to try the wine, either of those, and get some comments or feelings about them, and get experience. And it's not right or wrong, it's your experience. If when I was doing coffee tastings, I was saying cherry, and they'd say no, it's raspberry. That's okay, be wrong, and get that experience. And then, so like for like. So I think it's useful not to take a 20, 80 euro and make a fool of yourself or whatever, or prove
yeah
that you like a 20. No, to get 5 Cabernet Francs there from different terroir, and decide which one you like best,
hmm
and then do the test over again, or do that with friends at a party. I think that's really useful. Or if you're having it at home, have Cabernet Franc, have a little notebook to make comments about the experience, and then classify it that way, than just not doing big red wines or 80-pound wines or whatever like that.
mm,
Or even, different chickens. For example, when I moved to the UK, I would go to the supermarket for chicken, and they would have organic chicken, or free-range chicken, or corn-fed chicken, and I said, where's the
yeah
organic free-range corn, So it's like, no, because these are all marketing concepts, okay?
mm,
They're saying, we're going to get the organic people with this chicken. We're going to get the people who care about the happy chickens running around with this. And then we're going to get the corn-fed people, because
mm,
if it looks better and they're eating a better feed or whatever, like that. Instead of like, which one tastes the best, or which
yeah
one's the most, so don't fall for the marketing things, you know, fall for your taste.
oh
You
that's
know,
so huge. I love that. And that's really true. That's your presence to what you are appreciate. You don't let yourself be influenced in a way, potentially, well, I'd say over influenced, because it's nice to actually hear what someone else is experiencing, because it may open up something in you to say, wow, I didn't notice that within this dish, or I didn't notice that in this dining experience. Well, you just highlighted something to me, this whole paying attention, because we're not all paying attention to the same things, right?
right. And our experience is different. So
Yeah.
every one of us knows his or her own opinion better than anyone else. You are the world's number one expert on your opinion, David. So you no, so your feelings matter because I can't get into your body, and I can't get
That's
into
a good
anyone
thing.
listening. No, but that's what's no, but that's what's beautiful. And
Yeah,
why?
makes us all unique.
Yeah, because all our experiences are different. You
Yeah.
know, growing up and where we've been and who we talk to, but we can add to that library of experiences. Okay, by reading books or talking to people, or exchanging views, or researching, or
Yeah.
watching movies and stuff like that. So, or we can nurture that opinion, but that early nurturing period, we can acquire that.
Yeah.
You know, the things that you picked up from your growing up, from your parents and from your environment and your experience and spitting out food and all these, or the great, that's that's yours, and you need to bring that forward. You know,
Yeah.
I became a restaurant cook because my mother wasn't a very good cook. I didn't become because she was a good cook, but I value those early experiences, you know?
Yeah.
So take that experience. I think together we're building a formula a little bit. Take your experiences, that unique you, your view, and
Yeah.
build upon them and start asking yourself the question, how does this make me feel? You know?
Yeah. And express it,
Or how does it
externalize it.
feel on your tongue? You
Hmm.
know, it's
Yeah.
like, you know, I was reading about brain freeze because uh, my kid had a milkshake and then had a headache and didn't understand. And I was wondering about how brain
Oh,
freeze
yeah.
happens, you know, and it's because when there's extreme cold hits the roof of your mouth and the roof of the mouth happens to be hot or it's not primed, that
Yeah.
sensory together just can create a nasty explosion. Okay.
Wow.
So that's unpleasant, but that's wonderful, you know, that all these things are going on, you know, when you're eating, you know,
Yeah.
it's incredible. Um, a restaurant critic for a Seattle paper took me out in Seattle, and they were serving these little miniature frozen foie gras pups. And I said to Nancy, I said, let's put it in our mouth, the whole thing, and see who can make it last the longest in our mouth. Okay? So she goes, okay. So we did that. So we made it last for about 2 minutes, 3 minutes. But
Wow.
it was one of the greatest experiences ever because foie gras is fat. And as the fat melts in your mouth, all kinds of amazing things are happening, you know? So it went from
Extraordinary.
cold to hot. So first of all, I'm sure the chef
Yeah.
didn't think of that. Nancy hadn't. And I thought of it because I grew up, we used to get Pez candies and we'd take them in car trips. And we would put a Pez in our mouth and see who could make it last the longest because it was a great contest of self-control. You know, you want to eat the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, that's from when I was 6 years old. And it would make the car trip go faster because we could make each Pez last for about 20 minutes. So I was taking my experience as a kid, as a 6-year-old, and bringing it to foie gras served in an unusual way, in a cold way. And I believe that foie gras cold, if you don't let it melt in your mouth or in a certain way, you're going to miss it. It's not at its best at that cold temperature.
Yeah.
But you know, Massimo Bottura does a foie gras ice lolly, a popsicle,
Wow.
but an ice cream. But he's assuming you're going to lick it, that you're not going to bite, chew, and swallow in 10 seconds. He's assuming that that's going to last, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think Massimo, and in my own way, me, we don't like that we work on that foie gras. You know, first of all, you know, we work on that dish. You might not eat foie gras or someone out there. That's not the point of the story, but there's some incredible taste. And they don't want you to eat that in 8 seconds, you know, so because you're just not getting it, you know. So,
So true. That's so great. Those are such great examples. All of those,
and
Dan.
I'm sure your
You
heart's
know.
been broken when you prepared something. I'm sorry, you have to enjoy cooking for me because I obsess about what we're eating and stuff, you know. And I think
Yeah.
chefs like that. Um, chefs like it, but it adds to your pleasure and to your experience. And
Yeah.
also, there's shucks. there are different things that happen there, you know, with spicy food or hot cold, you know. So it's about
Yeah.
paying attention, you know. You're more eloquent the way you describe it, the layers, the experience, the being present, mindfulness, tastefulness. You can do that. I don't think that way to that level of you, but just my life's been about paying attention, you know. And I've been talking about, there are a lot of people who are transmitters and there are people who are receivers, receptors. Okay. So you know what? I love to talk and I'm talking here, but I can't teach myself really anything by talking. I learn by listening to other people. So yeah, transmitting because we have pride and you want to share your discoveries and your observations and your feelings. And that back and forth is really great. But you have to decide that that person that you're at the table with can bring things to the table that you can't bring.
Yeah.
So even these foodies who are great, even the wine people who can taste much, much, much better than us, they still can learn from us, you know? And the great ones listen. You know, even Adam Gopnik's a great writer or whatever, but he goes, Dan, you know, I've talked, this is okay. I've got a lot for you, but there are other people in the room that, you know, basically he wants to get juice from everybody.
Wow, amazing. I
So
love
that's
that.
also,
Beginner's mind.
yeah, but it's part of that shared experience. So if you're at the head of the table and you're just going to dictate that I'm, you know, Petit Renault or whatever and listen to me, and well, no, actually. There's that person who had Pez as a kid as a contest, you know, or whatever, or had, you know, terrible meatballs or great chicken soup or whatever. You know, we enrich the experience at the table. So I think part of the pleasure is enjoying, you know, what other, you know, if I eat pizza with a Neapolitan and I'm in New York, and the pleasure isn't winning the war that Naples is better than New York and vice versa. No, it's what that person brings to the conversation, to the enjoyment.
Well, we've kind of think run up our time here, Dan. Like, I don't want to take more of your time right now, but what would you like to share as kind of a parting sharing around eating for pleasure?
Well, you talk about presence, you say about being present, and I say, like, just be ready for things to happen. And it's not only food, but at the meal, just be ready for discoveries to be made. Notice what other people are doing or feeling if you're not talking to them. Be open. If you're in a cafe, you can be at a cafe, a coffee shop, and all you're having is a flat white or whatever, but things around you can happen. And I know a lot of people are shy or a little bit introvert, so it's going to be hard to introduce you to strangers like that guy in Perpignan. But if you can talk to people and not in a that you're coming on or whatever, you'll be surprised how delighted that people will be that you start talking to them, or even, you know, groups. So I would say be ready for experience and plug in would be the thing, is that every waking moment, particularly if you live in an area where it could be the country, can be a city or whatever, but if you can encounter other people or other flavors or experiences, if you lock in, you said it, let's end on your thing, okay? Integrate, don't disintegrate.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Dan. Where can people learn more about you and find you on social media or elsewhere?
Okay, so I'm Young and Foodish. YOUNGAND Foodish on everywhere. So every Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, youngandfoodish.com. So any place you want to integrate with me, those are the places to do it. And actually, social media gives us great opportunity. There's so much we abhor about social media, but the fact that we can be alone and integrate with people is a marvel. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Any, are you able to do any live events that are coming up or next year? Or do you have anything that you're looking to? Don't you have Pizza Festival you used to every year
I'm
in
bringing
London?
back London events
Uh-huh.
in the fall or the
Great.
autumn, as they say in Britain.
Yeah.
So, but for the moment, I'm going to keep it to outdoor events because it
Uh-huh.
seems a third wave is hitting us and
Uh-huh.
the the Delta variant and stuff. So unfortunately,
Hmm.
they're just not they're not sure things.
Yeah.
So I'll keep it to outdoor events
Hmm.
for the foreseeable future. Hopefully, I'll be
Beautiful.
getting back to Paris. This is the longest I've been away from Paris in 25 years.
I mean, I can't remember the last meal we had together. I think it was in London. We got to get, yeah, it's like, I can't wait for that meal. We got to do something. Well, I was able to do something special. We'll do what you just said together, and it'll be certainly, eating for and with pleasure. And so I look forward to that very much.
Yeah, every meal can
And
be a pleasure, though. If you're living
yeah,
for birthdays and anniversaries and New Year's Eve for your pleasure, you're missing it, man. Live for
yeah,
the forget those days because that's when it's hard to get reservations in restaurants and the chefs are overworked and unhappy. Those are not the nights, and they're overpriced. No, it's the no, it's the other 362 days or whatever it is. Live
yeah.
for those days.
Oh, I love
And
that.
like you say, Mondays.
Yeah,
Yeah, Mondays have to be outstanding.
yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dan. Love you, brother. So great to have you here. Thanks everyone for listening in. We'll put Dan's link also in the comments here, and or the body description. And yeah, eat with pleasure. Thanks for joining us, and stick around for this series. We're coming back pretty much every week. Bye. See you around, Dan.
Thank you, David.
My pleasure.